Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. After just 1 year in the ACC, Notre Dame is back to being an independent and starts 2021 on another quest to returning to the college football playoff. The Fighting Irish clock in at number 15 in our early Gridiron Expert Top 25, and we are here to give you a brief outlook of their 2021 season, and then we're going to dive into their schedule. We're not predicting anything, but we're going to preview their schedule to see if a return trip to the playoff is even feasible. So you look at Notre Dame, guys. Again, we mentioned 1 year in the ACC, went 10-2, made the ACC championship game, but got annihilated by Clemson, a team they beat earlier in the year in South Bend, but it was without Trevor Lawrence, and then made the college football playoff still, but lost to Alabama in that game, 31-14. The question always is, will Notre Dame ever get over the hump? They have made 2 college football playoff appearances under Brian Kelly, yet they are 0-7 in BCS/New Year's Six bowl games. That would include national championships and playoff appearances. 0-7 in BCS/New Year's Six bowl games since 1998. All 7 of those losses coming by at least 14 points. All 7 of those losses coming by at least 14 points. So even if Notre Dame does get to a big game, another New Year's Six bowl, say they get back to the playoff, are they going to be able to do anything? They haven't for 23 years now. When will it change? When you look at this team, guys, they lose a lot of key players from that playoff team we saw last year, namely their star quarterback, Ian Book. Ian Book has departed, and now more than likely Jack Cohn, the Wisconsin transfer, will take over as quarterback for the Fighting Irish. It's not a lock, but the Fighting Irish were lucky to get a transfer that has Power 5 playing experience, even though many would say he was just mediocre during his time with the Badgers. But only 3 starters back on offense. Jack Cohn new at quarterback. They're going to rely heavily on Kyron Williams, who kind of had a breakout season at running back, but you question how well the offensive line will hold up for him as Notre Dame is replacing 4 offensive linemen. The defense returns 6 starters led by now Marcus Freeman, the new defensive coordinator in from Cincinnati. And that's going to be huge for the Fighting Irish, guys. That's going to be really huge for them. He was one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, did a phenomenal job with Cincinnati. Can he do the same up in South Bend? So we take a look at their schedule. Notre Dame back as an independent, no conference tie-ins, no conference games. Every game matters for Notre Dame as an independent, and not having the liberty of playing in a conference championship game. To get to the playoff, they have to go maybe 12-0, 11-1 might even be pushing it to see if they can get in there or not. So we take a look here. They open up the season at Florida State. That's a big-time game, guys. Many people believe Notre Dame will be favored in this game. Many people will be picking Notre Dame to win this game. They beat the Seminoles 42-26 in South Bend last year. But Florida State showed flashes of brilliance on occasion in 2020, and now they're in year 2 under Mike Norvell and might have some more stability at quarterback, whether they go with Jordan Travis or Mackenzie Milton, who has miraculously recovered from his leg injury he suffered at UCF and looked very good in Florida State's spring game. Whoever's under center for Florida State, they're going to direct an offense that's going to be much better than what you saw in 2020. The game on a Sunday night in Tallahassee is one that Notre Dame cannot afford to overlook. If you're looking from an experience standpoint, Florida State might own the advantage. From a talent standpoint, it could be Notre Dame, but a lot of key pieces to replace for the Fighting Irish. Opening the season prime time on the road against an improving team, not necessarily ideal if I'm a Notre Dame fan. So at Florida State, Toledo, Purdue, Wisconsin. I love the back-to-back Big Ten games here. Obviously, Wisconsin, the bigger one of the 2. Purdue, certainly no slouch, but Notre Dame gets both of these games in South Bend. They play Wisconsin in Chicago. And that'll be a nice little reunion for Jack Cohn if, in fact, he is the starting quarterback for Notre Dame. And that's going to be a huge game, guys, here because Wisconsin has a chance to be a top 10 team at this point in time. Same goes for Notre Dame. This should be a top 15 matchup if everything goes, Wisconsin's way and everything goes Notre Dame's way. So this is a huge resume-boosting win for the Fighting Irish in their quest to return to the college football playoff. They can get a win at a neutral site over a good Wisconsin team. It's going to be a very solid team from Paul Chryst this year. That's huge in terms of their playoff hopes, especially if they were to slip up somewhere down the road over the course of this season. So Wisconsin and Chicago, to me, is the first Big game, big test for Notre Dame. How they respond to a game that's going to be, a battle in the trenches, if you ask me. Very, very physical. Remains to be seen. That's really what we're going to see if Notre Dame is, an elite national title playoff type contender, or hey, all right, they lose this game. Maybe they're not there yet. Let's see how they fare the rest of the year. After the Wisconsin game, though, guys, I think that's where you begin to see the key stretch for Notre Dame. So obviously Wisconsin's going to be a great benchmark, right? Wisconsin's going to be that first big test where if Notre Dame wins it, they're legit. We need to start taking them seriously as playoff contenders. If they don't, it's not that we're writing them off, but it's that the room for error becomes very, very small now. But I believe that the key stretch for Notre Dame in 2021 starts here against Cincinnati and ends against North Carolina. So the entire month of October. And we start with Cincinnati here. A game where the Bearcats very well could be higher ranked than Notre Dame, even if Notre Dame were to upset, or not even upset, just take down Wisconsin the week prior. Cincinnati's a dang good football team, guys. And while they might not make the playoffs because they're unfortunately a group of 5 team, Luke Fickell's doing a phenomenal job with the Bearcats, and no one needs to overlook them. So, first off, you're going to have a Jack Cohn reunion here. You're going to have a Marcus Freeman reunion here. Freeman, now the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, was the defensive coordinator at Cincinnati last year. That's going to be a great game in and of itself. But Cincinnati's no slouch. Cincinnati's going to be rested up coming into this game. I believe they have a bye week coming into this game in South Bend. Notre Dame's going to be coming off a very physical matchup against Wisconsin. It's not out of the realm of possibility. It's not impossible. It's not far-fetched to think that Cincinnati can come into South Bend and beat the Fighting Irish. It's a huge game, guys. The possible top 15 showdown on October 2nd. After that game, Notre Dame travels to Virginia Tech, a potential night game in Blacksburg. We know how difficult Lane Stadium is to play in at night, especially, guys, if we can have full capacity or close to it at many of the stadiums across the country this year. Virginia Tech has a big year for Justin Fuente. He can kind of get a little bit of breathing room if he can get a win over a potential top 10 Notre Dame team. We know, again, how hostile that environment's going to be on October 9th. They get a bye week going into the game against USC, much needed. Very physical game. And this 3-game stretch here, guys, could be the key stretch in and of itself. We're saying the month of October, but just these 3 games, period, are tough enough as it is. So Notre Dame gets a nice break, plays USC in South Bend. So getting that game at home is huge, I will say, because USC is going to be really dang good here, and we know Clay Helton's in need of a big season. So to come on the road, maybe get a win over their rival, would be huge. And again, giving him some breathing room, especially if Notre Dame is undefeated or a one-loss team at this point. Keaton Slovis returning at quarterback. Graham Harrell's air raid offense is going to do very well. Todd Orlando doing great things with that defense. Should do even better in year 2 as DC out west. So a big game here against USC on the 23rd. And then North Carolina on October 30th. Notre Dame beat the Tar Heels 31-17 last year on the road. But this is a different North Carolina team than we saw last year. And this is obviously going to be a different Notre Dame team than we saw last year. Sam Howell returns. I believe like 18 starters return for North Carolina this year, something ridiculous like that. This Matt Brown squad is not only, to me, I think the biggest threat to Clemson within the ACC, but they're a college football playoff dark horse as well. But again, while all these games are so difficult, none of them a shoe-in win for Notre Dame, certainly not a shoe-in loss either. One thing you should note is that in this 4-game stretch that we mentioned is so key for the Fighting Irish, 3 of these 4 games are at home. Cincinnati, USC, North Carolina. And that is the one thing that Notre Dame does have going for them. That is the one thing they have going for them. 3 of those 4 key games are at home for Notre Dame. And again, if they can have a pretty decent crowd on their side, it can make a world of difference. We know that. Home field advantage in college football is so important. But these 4 games, the entire month of October, is going to show, hey, Notre Dame is still a playoff contender. If they win all of these games, even if they lose to Wisconsin, they win all of these games going into November, they're in the thick of the playoff hunt. If they're somehow undefeated going into November, obviously they're in the thick of the playoff hunt. They're a top 3 team, I would say, at that point in time. These 4 games are going to show whether or not Notre Dame is still at that elite level for 2021, or if they're going to regress from that 10-2 season they had last year, where, of course, they made the college football playoff. You will know that there's a few games into this key game stretch. And again, you could even group Wisconsin in there if you want to. That's going to be an absolute dogfight. The rest of the schedule, very manageable for Notre Dame. Navy, always play extremely well against Navy. Notre Dame's one of those teams that figures out that triple option and plays well against it. Marcus Freeman's not going to get beat by it. At Virginia, a team that's Middle of the pack ACC, Bronco Mendenhall has turned their Cavaliers program around, but are they prepared enough to win this game at home against Notre Dame, who very well could be a top 10 team at the time? Georgia Tech getting there with Jeff Collins. Not quite there yet. Notre Dame beat the Yellow Jackets 31-13 last year. They are showing great signs of improvement, especially offensively. But still, I think a year or two away from really taking a big step forward under Jeff Collins down in Atlanta. And then they end the year out west at Stanford. That's in a way a trap game, especially again if Notre Dame is at a very high level at this point. If they are, a one-loss team or undefeated going out west to Stanford, that's one of those trap games where you would really hate to see them slip up. I think Stanford's going to struggle quite a bit offensively this year. I think defense is going to be an area where they're going to, I would say, be more of a strength for them, more so than their offense. But obviously that could obviously change by the season finale on November 27th. So a lot can change over the course of an entire season. This is a game where I think Notre Dame's going to have to flex their muscles defensively, shut down the Cardinal offensively, and hopefully by this point they have figured out any offensive issues they have, and Notre Dame can exploit Stanford's defense, which I think is going to be the key for David Shaw's squad. The FPI, guys, has Notre Dame regressing quite a bit. 10 wins last year, 8-4 this year. That's not going to get you to the playoff. That's not going to get you to a New Year's Six bowl game. But again, when you have talked about and thought about teams that are going to take a step back from what they did in 2020, Notre Dame is a team and a name that comes up quite a bit, comes up very frequently. Whether or not that happens in 2021 remains to be seen, but the schedule is difficult. Wisconsin and in the entire month of October are the biggest games on Notre Dame's schedule. And again, out of those 5 games, as we mentioned, you win 3 of those. If I'm a Notre Dame fan, I'm happy. If I win 3 of the 5, 60% of those games, I'm thrilled. That might be good enough to get you a 9-10 win season again. So while the playoff might not be in the cards for Notre Dame this year, another solid season for Brian Kelly and the Fighting Irish is not out of the cards. They might take a step back, but a solid year is still very possible. And of course, we'll have our official prediction for the Fighting Irish here in just a few months. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. As always, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Also, make sure to hit that notification button, hit that bell as we continue to progress through this series. You don't know which team's coming up next, and you're not going to want to miss it. And I can promise you're not going to want to miss prediction season either. So make sure to hit that notification button. Do not miss out on any videos we have here on the channel. Also, don't miss out on anything down in the description below. Everything there is for you, the die-hard college football fan. So take advantage of it. Check it out. Take advantage of it. Help you get through this offseason and get some exclusive content in the regular season as well. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.